Today I'm customizing die cut flowers in two ways. Hello there, Michelle Short here with Terrific Tags with Michelle. I'm here on the Altenew YouTube channel twice a month, so if you enjoy my videos I'd love for you to subscribe. So let's get started. For my flower today, I'm using the beautiful Crafty Flower Coral Charm Peony layering dies. They're absolutely beautiful flowers, you can see. There are lots of layers for the petals, and then there are also lots of layers for the flower centre as well. Now I think it's absolutely beautiful as is, and I'm actually going to bring in the card that I created for the release, showing it in its entirety. It's just absolutely beautiful. You can see all of those lovely layers there. It really adds lots of dimension to the flower. But for the technique I wanted to do today, where I'm adding texture onto the petals, I felt that if I used all of the layers, you wouldn't really see the texture that much. So I decided to just use some of the layers today. And that is a great way to be able to customize flowers. Depending on the actual flower and the die cuts, this could change your flower completely from what it looked like originally to what it looks like when you've did everything together, which is really great. Really great way to customize flowers in a really easy way. So I'm just using layer 1, 2, 3 and 4 of the petals, and then I'm just using the first layer of the flower center today. For the second way of customizing these flowers, I wanted to add some texture on top. Now there are a few different ways to do this, but for today I thought I would add some scoring lines. And again, you could do this in two different ways. You could have them debossed. So I'm going in from the back of the flower because I want these to be embossed, but you could definitely do these debossed and add the debossed scoring lines. Sometimes I find with this kind of thing, I may accidentally miss a line by accident, like I haven't lined it up properly with my stylus here and the scoring board. So I don't always like to show the debossed lines, but it is a great way and it would give a completely different look. But I'm doing it on the back of the flower here, and you can see that from the front you get that lovely embossed look. I'm kind of going for a little bit of like a plaid design, I suppose, a very simple plaid design. I wanted sort of straight lines here, but again you could do this in lots of different ways. So you can see that I'm lining up each petal, and then I'm just literally being quite random here and just picking where one of the scoring lines is on the scoring board and using my stylus to go over the top. I do go over it multiple times just to make sure that I get a really nice deep impression. I did find that sometimes if I didn't do the first lines really nice and deep, that by the time I put the second lines on top, you didn't really see them that much. So I am going over the lines on a few different times, you can see here, just to make sure that they're really deep. Some of the petals I decided to do like 3 vertical lines and then 3 kind of horizontal lines. Some of them I did 2 horizontal, 1 vertical. I just did all different things. I think it looks quite nice being quite random, and you can see here that it really is very random on these petals. I decided to do each petal separately. Not only did I think that that would probably be easier for me to try and line up, I thought that, again, I wanted each petal to be quite random, but you could absolutely go over the entire flower. Just make sure to hold it down like in one place, and then where one line is, you would go across the entire flower. But like I said, I decided to do it in this particular way. You could definitely do this with embossing folders or press plates. Press plates would give you a debossed look, and embossing folders would, depending on which way up you had it, would either give you an embossed look or a debossed look. So you could definitely do that as well. Just place the flower inside of the embossing folder and run that through the die cutting machine. But I wanted today to do something that didn't require too many supplies, and this is a really quick and easy way to be able to do it. But I did think maybe some patterns would look really nice, like polka dots or something like that, but I'm going for the kind of plaid look, like I say. For the petals that are going to be quite close to the bottom, these are going to get covered up quite a bit, so I'm focusing the lines mainly sort of towards the tips of the petals. You are still going to see some lines here and there, but you're not going to see them as much because the other petals are going to be on top. So like I say, I'm trying to focus most of the lines on these ones quite close to the tips of those petals. And again, going in very randomly here, you can see that if I miss a line by accident, I just use it as an opportunity to add an extra line on top. So just finishing off with the last few petals here. And then I can finish off with this last one here. And I really love how they look. I think they're very unique. I then want to add some colour on top, and I'm using the new Moonlit Twilight Fresh Dye Ink collection. This is a really lovely muted purple set of inks. They do go on very, very muted to start with. As they dry, I do think they kind of gain a little bit of vibrancy. So I have placed the petals down onto my sticky mat here, so I can hold them in place while I do this ink blending on top. I'm going in with the lightest shade first and a mini blending brush. This is Celestial Mist, and it is very, very pale. You can see that you can barely see it basically because it is so pale, but I knew that I wanted some lighter areas on these flowers, and I didn't want them to just be the stark white of the cardstock, so I thought that I would just add that lighter layer on first. I'm now jumping ahead to the third darkest, which is Dreamy Periwinkle, and usually with flowers I tend to add the darker colour towards the base of the petals and then lighten up at the tips of the petals, but for today I thought I would go a little bit more random and add more kind of darkness to the tips of the petals and the sides of the petals and leave the centres a little bit lighter. So as these inks dry, not only do they add a little bit of extra vibrancy to them, they also smooth out. So you can see here that I'm not being particularly neat with this. As they dry, they do smooth out and look really pretty. And they also lighten a little bit as well, so it's definitely something to think about, because at this point I'm thinking that they are very dark, this last colour here, but actually once it dries it does lighten up a little bit, so they don't end up being as dark as what they look now. I do find that where the embossed lines are tends to grab hold of the ink a little bit more, so they do tend to automatically go a little bit darker, which is quite nice because it just kind of shows them up a little bit more. So I can now work on the leaves, and because my flower is a little bit more muted in tone, I thought it would be quite nice to have more vibrant leaves. So I'm using my favourite Green Valley Fresh Dye Ink collection today, and again a mini blending brush. And I'm starting off with a base layer of the lightest shade, which is Firefly. I want these leaves to be darker towards the base of the leaves and then lighten up towards the tips. So I'm now going in with the second lightest shade, which is Grassfield, and then I can go in with my darkest shade, which is Shadow Creek. This is the second to darkest colour in the collection. I don't often add the darkest shade, mainly because these leaves are going to be popped under the flower, and so to me I don't think there's any point me adding that darkest shade because you're not going to end up seeing it. So I can now work on my base, and I'm creating a tag today, but this flower would look really pretty on a card as well. I have cut 2 tags from white cardstock using the largest tag in the Terrific Tags die set. I wanted my tag to be a little bit shorter so that the flower pretty much takes over the entire tag. So I've cut off about just under an inch from the bottom of that tag. I've added some glue tape onto the back of that, and now I can sandwich that onto the back of the other tag. This is going to give me some stability to the tag, but it's also just going to make sure that it looks nice and neat from the back of the tag as well. I then just tend to like to go around the outside edge of the tags with my nail just to remove any excess cardstock that tends to hang around during die cutting. I can then bring this back over to my guillotine and I can cut the other side of that tag down. So now I've got my tag ready to go. I can now work on the flower. So I want to add a little bit of shape to this so that it doesn't end up being completely flat, because I haven't got all of the layers to this flower. I was worried that it would look quite flat, and so I'm showing you a little bit of a sneak peek of a product in the December release here, so don't tell anyone that I'm being naughty and sharing it early, but this is a great way to be able to shape flowers really quite easily. So this is a moulding mat and a stylus tool. There are extra stylus tools in this set, but I'm just using one of them here that's got quite a large end to it, and I'm just pushing that stylus into the cardstock, and because I've got that resistance from that moulding mat, it's automatically going to try and curve up that cardstock. If I was to do this properly, I would go over the entire petal with that stylus and it would cup them and give really nice shape to them. But I didn't want to do that with this one because obviously I've got those embossed lines and it would just push them out. But just by adding that little bit of shape to the center of this flower, it really has made quite a big difference. So I can now layer up all of these petal pieces. I'm just adding a small amount of liquid glue around that keyhole in the center, and then I can line them up one on top of each other using that keyhole system. So just adding that glue onto the back of this last petal piece here, lining up with all of those keyholes underneath, and then I can press that down with my finger. Once that glue dries, it's going to dry really nice and strong, and it's going to secure all of those pieces together. I don't like to add too much glue onto the back of the actual petals so that they can kind of have some movement between them. I'm then just using that stylus again to cup the flower center. I can add some glue onto the back of that and adhere that down into the center of the flower. Now you are going to see that keyhole here. I am going to cover it up, but I knew that I was going to cover it up, so there was no point me adding the rest of the layers of the flower center. And then I can just go back in with that stylus and just press that down, make sure that that flower has got all of that lovely dimension, and you can see that there, that it's got lots of dimension even though I haven't added all of the layers to that flower. Before I stick my flower down onto my tag, I am just going to add some black twine at the top. So I'm just popping that through the hole there, securing that at the front, and then I can tie that in a bow. Usually I would do this last, but because this flower is quite dimensional, I thought it would just be easier for me to do this first. So just getting that bow to the size that I want it to be. And then I can cut down those tails with some scissors. I can then bring in the flower, and before I stick that down, I want to adhere the leaves around it. So I'm adding some liquid glue onto the back of those leaves. I don't want to add glue onto the tips of those leaves because they are going to overhang the sides of that tag, and I don't want you to be able to see glue from the back. So I'm just figuring out here where the placement of these leaves should go, or should be, I should say. And then once I'm happy, I can add some glue onto the back of the leaves there and then pop them behind the flower. So just moving that twine there out of the way, and then I can pop that down. I can then remove the flower and then just press down those leaves, make sure that they're going to adhere really nicely down onto that tag. And then I can add some more glue onto the back of the flower, and I do want to make sure that I'm adding quite a bit here. This is quite a large flower, so I want to make sure that it sticks down really nicely. So just using my tweezers there to hold that in place, and then I can hover it just to make sure I'm happy with the placement, and then once I'm happy I can press that down, and I am just going to hold it there with my finger for a couple of minutes just to make sure that that glue dries really nicely. And while I'm doing that, I can just lift up those petals, add that extra dimension onto that flower. I have then stamped and heat embossed a sentiment from the Sentiment Strips stamp set onto Crafty Necessities Jet Black cardstock, and then I've cut that down into a strip. I can then add some instant dimension foam tape onto the back of that. Remove the backings off of that foam tape, and then I can adhere that down into the centre of the flower, and that's going to cover up that keyhole there in the centre. So again, I just like to hover things in place, make sure that I'm happy and that it's straight, and then once I'm happy I can press that down. And then I decided not to add any embellishments onto the tag. There isn't a huge amount of white space on this tag because it is so small and that flower is so big. So I thought it would be quite nice just to have that flower as the main focal point today. And you can see all of that dimension of that flower. And then I've got all of that lovely embossing on the petals as well. Links to the products that I used will be listed in the description bar on YouTube and also over on the Altenew blog. Thank you so much for watching and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Wait, we have more where that came from. If you're after fabulous card making tutorials, you are definitely in the right spot. Our amazing design team create and upload fabulous video tutorials right to this YouTube channel. If you don't want to miss another amazing crafting tutorial, don't forget to subscribe and click that fun red button that you can see. Let's become paper crafting experts together.